So Jen, now go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jen Dable, and I am the committee chair for our Education Wing Master Plan. And this group is fantastic. Of course, we kind of took a year pause, I guess we'll say, but it's May now and we're back. So this is to bring everybody up to date as to where we are, what we've done, where we were last March, and where we're picking it up now. So on the screen, you see Growth Design Group. That's the architecture firm that we've been working with, specifically Paul, who is the architect that worked on our sanctuary project. And so he is very familiar with our building and with our congregation. And you can see here is a list of everybody that is on our committee. And I would like to take this moment to say thank you to everybody on this list. It's been a great group of people to work with. Okay, next, Jean.
Jen, let me just, and Jean,
Yes.
Could you go back one slide? This is Pastor Blake. I'll just read through the names because I know there are some people by phone who can't see everything. So
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You will make it through, no problem. So Let me just read the group. So in addition to Jen, who's our chair, who is also an architect and has been such a great leader to us, Pastor Katie and I have been on the committee, along with Brenda Goebel from the staff, and then Paul Block, Stephanie Granger, Andrew Hansen, Marita Herkert Oakland, Eric James, Greg Lampy, Jean Nelson, Brenda Cisco, Lori Stensland, and Elise Uphoff. Thanks.
Right, thank you. I apologize for that. I will from here on out read. I will not assume that people can see the screen here. And so starting out, we said, okay, this is a big project, and we know just it affects everybody in the congregation. And so we really wanted to hear from as many people as possible that actually use space in the education wing. And so we interviewed, okay, I can't say we, I guess it was Paul, the architect, and the engineers. And they sat down, well, the engineers only met with some of them. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Paul specifically sat down with everybody on this list, and it was the worship, music, and quilting group, the buildings and grounds and sustainability committee, the our administrative staff, pastors and Brenda and all of our staff, youth education and youth and family committees, library leadership, all of those people that run our library, community users of space. So we have the Boy Scouts, and we have yoga, and we have, I think we have yoga. Anyway, anybody from the community that uses that portion of the building. And then also all of us that Pastor Blake listed, all of us on the Education Wing Task Force. We were also interviewed and got to give our comments. So we really feel like we heard from everybody. And I want to emphasize that because this isn't just being led by one or two people. Okay. So executive summary, big overall picture, scope of work. We focused on 6 areas for building improvement. And when we say building, it's from the basement, first floor, second floor. It's the whole education wing. First, we noticed that there is existing building maintenance that needs to be addressed. And existing building maintenance could be water drainage, it could be roofing, it could be, are the toilets working, all of those kinds of things. The second scope of work item is we wanted to maximize use of existing building space for our existing ministries and also new ministries. In the groups that were interviewed, there's a lot of new ministries that groups want to explore, but maybe we don't have ideal space for it at this point. So that was something else that we were looking at. The third item is comfort areas, and comfort areas really is restroom facilities It's any kind of nursing rooms for moms or family restrooms where you need a family member to assist. So comfort areas really include that when we talk about its restroom areas. 4, overall building aesthetics. Of course, and I'm an architect, so we can't ignore aesthetics, right? We understand that it's not only how a building functions, but it's how a building looks to people using the building. And we understand that this building serves not only members of the congregation, maybe new members and members that have been here for 50 years, but it's also, we want it to be inviting and welcoming to any new members coming and using the building. Our 5th item that we looked at is improving the building's thermal performance. And I think I can even, it's not only the thermal performance, that's insulation value. But we want to make sure that we are using the least amount of energy to heat and cool the building. And I think, and thank you very much to our sustainability committee group that we interviewed. They had a lot of input and ideas. And so this is really, I think, broader than just the thermal performance, but it's just our energy usage. And 6 is enhancing the southern main entrance. And for all of you that don't know north, south, east, west, this is the entrance into our parking lot. So we feel like most people use that entrance, and anybody that's used that entrance in the rain or when it's 0 degrees, and really any other time, there are some issues with that southern main entrance that we feel could be improved upon. So that's our executive summary. That's our 6 items that we were looking at. Okay, go ahead, Jean.
Oh.
I'll just keep talking, Jean. So you just keep that slide going. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay, and then, yes. So now we're going to go through each one of these and kind of get a little bit more specific. So existing building maintenance, waterproofing. Anybody that has been around may or may not know the basement of that education wing, we have a lot of water issues. It was flooded a couple years ago. The concrete block walls are showing deterioration. It's just been a constant problem. And so waterproofing that basement is number 1. And Jean will talk more about that later on. We also have Paul and I were walking around the building, and we were noticing there are other things on the building, and it's just the way that the exterior materials were installed. There's shear drip edges that may be not properly dripping away from the building, and it may be entering the walls. So there's just some little details that we might want to fix just to make sure that we are not allowing water into our walls. And lastly, I don't know if everybody knows this, but there is a fireplace in the youth room in the basement. And Brenda can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they use it. And Brenda said,
There's a youth room in the basement?
Never. Brenda, thank you, Brenda. Never. Never been used. And so that was one thing that we said, let's get rid of it. We can use that, better use that space for other things. And of course, our mechanical engineers were eyeing it for their duct chases, but we're not that far in the design. Okay, next. Next scope of work item, we want to maximize our building space. That means let's use the space that we have to the best of its ability. And so for education, we have most of the second floor is all the Sunday school rooms. So we want to improve classrooms on the second level. Also, we have so many children and families, and the parents, at least one, sometimes two with the littles, they all come up and bring kids to Sunday school. So it can get really crowded up there. And so we're looking at a more functional area for entry, gathering, and check-in for the Sunday school space. Ministry offices on first floor. I'm understanding that they're a little crowded, little crowded, and maybe Pastor Katie or Pastor Blake or Brenda or any other staff on the call can talk about this too. They need more space. So we're looking at how we can give them the space that they need. Meeting space, better meeting spaces for church and community organizations. We know we have that one room on first floor. That's fantastic. But there's a lot of space in the basement also that is not used. Let's go back to that water issue, right? And so if we can fix the water issue, we can create better and additional meeting spaces for everybody. The youth room is in the basement. We want to get that space. We're going to get the fireplace out of there for Brenda, and get that youth space maximized so our youth can use it. Let's see, specialty programming, improvements for the awe, storage, and some address of storage for the quilting program. We understand that there's so many different groups that use this, they use this space, and we want to make sure they all have the space they need for their ministry. Okay. Comfort areas. I was kind of talking about this earlier. It's the restrooms. This directive seeks to improve restroom facilities on all floor levels. We want to provide a single-use, ADA-compliant restroom that would enhance dignity for people of all abilities. We want to help with parenting of anyone needed assistance with restroom activities and provide respectful provisions for non-binary genders. We're really looking at all members of our community and how we can make sure that our comfort areas work for everybody. All right. Overall building aesthetics. Again, architects love aesthetics. We love the programming too, but we're going to be looking at this with the master plan. What can we do to improve the aesthetics of this particular portion of the building? We're looking at renovation of existing spaces for programming needs. The committee also identified the concern for overall aesthetics within the spaces, desiring to create a building interior aesthetic that would speak to the current and future expectations of interior spaces. This is especially important in the lower level of the education wing, where water leakage and moisture over time has deteriorated finishes to the point that rooms are no longer useful. True. And it's just musty. People don't want to use those rooms. They're musty, and the deterioration of the concrete block walls. So yes, so some of the aesthetics aren't just, we want a different color paint. We're gonna make the building be able to be used for everybody. Improve buildings' thermal performance. So again, not just insulation. The committee directive sought to improve the thermal performance of the 1966 Education Edition, not only with the replacement or upgrade of existing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems to more efficient and newer systems, but also to increase the performance of the building envelope wherever possible, including insulating exterior walls and roofs. We know that there already are new windows in that portion of the building, which if that wasn't done, that would be part of this section. But just so everybody knows, most heat loss is through the roof of a building. So we really want to look at the roof insulation on this 1966 portion.
Jen, I'd like to add a few comments on this
Yes,
slide.
please. Gene,
Okay.
this is your game right here.
I
Gene
know.
loves mechanical.
So not only are we going to upgrade, but we're also going to add air conditioning, which is something that hasn't really had central air in this wing. And if you notice that the Sunday school rooms get a little warm in the summertime now, they try to use these through the window units and they don't work that well. So hopefully this will be a great improvement. Also, ventilation will be improved to current standards. And this will really address the pandemic issues that we have with better ventilation. Also, the new system will provide humidity control for the basement areas to help lower the probability of mold and other growth down in that area. So we're really looking forward to the new mechanical systems to improve the air quality overall.
Thanks, Jean. That's exactly perfect. We love mechanical engineers. All right, and the last point was enhancing the southern entry. Since the 1994 Gathering Edition and the 2010 renovation to worship, the church had primarily 3 main entries: the Tokay Avenue entry and the Gathering entry on the southwestern side of the southern parking, and the second south entry to the east. The main southern entry, while desired to be the most prominent of the southern entries, does not have design prominence, cannot address the need for drop-off, and does not have a thermal airlock. The task force desired a solution to provide prominence, convenient drop-off and entry, and better protection of heating and cooling with a thermal airlock. I think that's a really good point. I alluded to the fact that when it's 0 degrees outside and you use that entry, everybody feels it every time those doors open. And so by installing an airlock, that is also helping conserve our heat, and we're not losing so much heat every time those doors open. All right, so then we have a scope of work items, our 6 items, and then we went through and we were trying to create priorities. So we understand that if we had all the money, we could do it all, but if not, let's create some priorities. And so we went priority A, B, C, and D. I don't know how we got to the letters. I'm not sure about that. We'll just go with it. Priority A is definitely, we felt, foundation drainage. Let's fix the issues with the water and the mold and the must in the basement. Also installing solar panels, we thought was a big priority for us. Removing the fireplace. Stairwells. We wanted to make sure the stairwells are meeting current code. And really that has to do with not the rise or run of the tread, but it's the railing. And the current code does not want a ball larger than 4 inches to be able to pass through. And that's really to help protect everybody from any danger from falling through those handrails. So that are the railings. That's really what we're looking at when we talk about the restroom, or I'm sorry, the stairwells. The lower level restrooms, the restrooms in the basement. I don't know if everybody is familiar, but they're in need of updating and they're not accessible. Meeting space. Oh, we have south entryway. It is very small and crowded before and after services, create an issue for spacing. Thank you so much, Andrea. That's exactly right. Very good point. Okay, so priority A, meetings, lower level education and meetings. We really want to get to maximize that space. There's so much square footage down there and it doesn't get used. Renovation of main level office space and renovation of library and nursery. So those were really we felt like our highest priorities. Let's get these things done first and foremost. Priority B was replacing the roof and adding additional installation. And when we do that, we could install solar panels. And while I said most heat loss is through the roof, this is something that we felt if we didn't have the money right now, that's something we could do as a separate project pretty easily, right? So we felt like we could put that as priority B. Priority C is the south entrance, the new canopy, the addition of an airlock, and renovation of the lobby finishes. We all feel that that's important, but we just can't, it's just not as important as the thermal performance and all of the other items in priority A. And then priority D, renovation of fellowship hall restrooms. These are the restrooms that sit behind the fellowship hall. It's down a hallway. I don't know if even everybody knows they exist. We installed a shower in one of them when we had homeless guests staying at our church. Anyway, I don't think those restrooms have been touched other than the shower. So that's priority D. All right. And we're not going to go through, I know this slide is not very readable. This is a Findorf opinion of probable cost is what they call it. It's not even an estimate. It's just because it's really a high level cost estimate, but it's a probable cost. And so really, if we're looking at scope of work, A, B, C, and D, if we said we want to do all of this, it's somewhere between 2.5 and $4 million. Somewhere in that broad range. There's been no design drawings done. There's been nothing like that. So Findorf or any construction company cannot give us actual prices until we pay an architect to do construction documents. But at this high level, and Findorf's been fantastic. They have worked with Paul and with Jean and all of the different groups, and they've been really good. And the other good thing is that Findorf is the contractor that did our sanctuary project in 2010. So they also know our building, and it's just an overall great company. So we just want to kind of give you that high level idea of what we're talking about money-wise. Okay. All right, so these, we're just gonna kind of go through, again, these are not construction drawings. These are just really schematic ideas. And this was really Paul's, our architect, his putting down on paper what he's hearing the committee and all of the groups he interviewed think about. And so in the lower level, you can see there's the addition of 4, let's see, behind the fellowship, Paul, 4 single-use restrooms. The 2 restrooms in the education wing would be redone, so they're single-use, but they're accessible. And you can see there's storage. We would be getting 3 new meeting rooms. We have storage space for all. We have mechanical, we have electrical. Our youth rooms are still down here. This is just to kind of start to give you an idea of what we're thinking. Okay, again, this is not construction drawings. Okay, Jean, let's go to first floor.
Janet, let me just mention, sorry, if you could go back once.
Oh, yeah.
It does say on there, but it's hard to read, that each of those meeting rooms right now, the idea might be that there's movable partitions that are very high quality, so that they're not like the ones that have been up in the Sunday school wing for all these times, so that we have flexibility, and the same as will be true upstairs too, so that if you need more space or you need to space people out, you can do that, or if you need smaller rooms, you can do that. And the finishes and the quality, if the waterproofing is done right, would be very similar to the meeting room upstairs on the main floor, except these could be much larger spaces. So if you've been to like an adult Bible study or other things where we've really been cramped in that meeting room, we could spread out and use one of these rooms and have the similar experience in a very nice environment, or they could be used for community groups or the youth or other things.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Pastor. Yeah. First floor plan. So we can see really the office, our staff they really need a lot more space. And so they would be taking over that meeting room that we have on first floor. And you can kind of see what we'd be getting. We'd also be revising the entry into the offices, and so that it's a little bit more open and have some sort of reception desk. These are all great. I really feel that we've talked to so many different user groups, and so you can see we have an open reception desk, and this could be used, by different groups on a Sunday morning even. But you can see within the administrative office space, they have their own conference and counseling room. They have their private offices. They have open work areas, workroom. They still have an area for their copier and all that. That would be in the workroom. And then you can see again, an addition of a single-use toilet. Really, we feel is very important for the comfort areas for our congregation. So this is again starting to see an idea of what we're thinking. And I can tell you as an architect, what you start with and what you end up with is usually different. So, and it's just because we kind of can continue to refine and perfect things. So this is just to get it in front of everybody so they can see it. Okay, Jean. Second floor. So second floor, of course, is our Sunday school area. And the second floor is really well used, right? Space. I know we use every last inch of that second floor for our Sunday school, but I think it could be laid out differently to better serve everybody. Again, you can see we'd be removing the current restrooms up there and inserting 4 single-use restrooms, 2 located near the check-in and 2 located down in the classroom area. And that's simply because during Sunday school class, there are always children that need to use the restroom. And rather than having to go all the way down the hallway, let's insert them right there so they're closer. But you can see we have a nursery space, preschool, we have a classroom, we have a workroom, we have an opening space. So a lot of the same kinds of spaces we have now. I think the biggest change would really be opening up that hallway, widening it because there's so many people up there, and then also that check-in space. So we'd be losing one meeting area up there and just opening it up for a large check-in. And here's just a really broad stroke idea of what that check-in area could look like. Again, just lots of space so you're not feeling crowded upstairs.
Yep. So Jen, you want to comment on the movable partitions again?
Yes, yeah. Movable partitions, I think for this type of use is so important. And I know when I hear movable partition, I think of the ones up on second floor now. These aren't. These are a whole new generation, really high quality, nice, so that they can be used in the closed position. But if we need to open them all up, we can do that too. Thanks, Jean.
And it's also available for community groups with larger needs.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be another larger meeting space if needed.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, let me just, so what they're saying too is that check-in area could open up into that room that says opening and the room that says classroom. So you would have a room almost as big as the fellowship hall if you wanted to upstairs for meetings, or you could close it off. And then similarly in the downstairs with the youth room and the classrooms there, we could have 3 rooms that were nearly that size if we needed to at any time, that could be used for adult or children or multi-generational activities.
And I have to say, Randy said hallelujah to new partitions. Any person who's ever taught Sunday school says hallelujah. Thanks, Randy. All right. Here's a couple just vignettes for you to see what we're talking about with the south entry into the parking lot. We really don't have coverage for rain or snow to facilitate helping people exit their vehicle and get into the church lobby. And you can see, I mean, they're kind of artistic, but in the upper left corner, you can kind of see that we would be adding on the entry like an airlock as well. So it's not that it would be taking away parking, because we don't want to take away any parking spaces. We understand how important those are, but it's really, let's rework that and so that it better serves everybody and makes for a better drop-off point.
Jen?
Yes.
Is there any way to address the fact that there's such a confined space down there where people are trying to leave their coats and then get into the elevator and get up the stairs or down the stairs? I'm just thinking, particularly now that we're talking about COVID restrictions and spacing people out.
Yeah.
If you have people entering all at once and they're all coming in that same space and they're all gathered there, it's, there's no way you can space out right now.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Yeah, we did have that conversation many times, and this is what this would do. Creating an airlock doesn't only help energy use, but it does space everybody out. The other thing that we were saying is that maybe the coats are removed from that area. So you enter the building and you bring your coat up to the other. I mean, maybe there's other spaces, better spaces for coats, right? Because I think we've all experienced that, crawling over each other to hang your coat or get your coat out. So yes, very good point.
Because I was thinking that even now during COVID, that entrance should almost be restricted only to people who need to use the elevator. Because of that, because you know, as a handicapped entrance only. Because
Andy, the reentry task force has really worked on that, because that's a really good point. And I think what we're planning, and we haven't sort of shared it yet, but you'll be getting more information as we start to do those in-person services, is we're going to have markers set out outside for people to wait at that are spaced 6 feet apart, and the ushers will welcome people in one group at a time so that we can avoid that bottleneck and that close contact during the COVID time as we're starting. So that's a really good point that we're working with the ushers and others to try and manage as we start those in-person services on May 16th.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you.
One more comment on that. For the short term, we're not going to use the coat racks. We're going to ask congregants to take their coats with them to the pews.
Okay. Awesome. And again, this is not a final design. It's really just to get an idea of what we're thinking and what we would need to meet our use.
Yeah.
So,
Jen, you might want to comment on the price tag of this one a little bit. It was quite high for what space it is.
It is, and I think that might add to why it was in our priority list as the last priority list. You know, we've heard from folks that were on the sanctuary committee, and I guess they wanted to address this, but again, they ran out of money, right? It ended up being priority D, and it's happening again. I don't remember, Jean, what exactly the cost of this feature was. It was a lot.
I believe it was in the 400,000 range.
Which feature?
This.
Yeah, so this would be
which feature?
Sure, Nancy, we're talking about the canopy extension, so that there would be a drop-off area that would be protected.
Okay.
And we looked at a number of iterations. I think the one in this plan was the least expensive, which was maybe around 400,000. And Jen and Jean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And this one, I'm not even sure that this one includes the airlock. And then we had others that extended the entryway with an airlock that were closer to 600,000 to 800,000. And so those were also worked through. The one that made this part of the plan at this time is just the canopy extension for ease of drop off, to remove any, weather implications and so on, and spread people out a little bit. But that, I think those are the ranges for that project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And can I ask a question? Does this large perspective east drawing, it doesn't show the airlock growth?
Correct. This was
Yeah,
the
I'm
mod.
sorry.
This was the option without the airlock. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, nothing can show everything at all, but I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
you realize that that's still one of the considerations, but this one shows the canopy.
Yeah.
No
Yep.
airlock.
Yeah, the airlock would come out to where that person is standing, if you can see the person.
Yep. Thank you.
But again, we understand we do not want to lose parking spaces. So that's very important.
Another thought that if this may be a separate capital fund project, it could be funded separately. So it's another reason for separating.
I'm sorry, Georgia had a question. The library would be in the same spot, Georgia, on first floor. She was just in the chat. She said she didn't know where and that was, I don't think I saw where the library will be on first floor. Same spot.
Yeah, I can go back to that first floor.
Yeah, it didn't show the other
It's-
side of
it's-
the.
Yeah,
courtroom.
it didn't, but yeah, it's right where it
Mhm.
was.
Mhm. All right, let's keep going here. All right, I think this is Jean.
Yep. Well, thank you.
All right.
So as we explained before, we've had a lot of water damage. And it's not just one-time events, it's a continuing seepage of water through the porous cement masonry units that construct the walls of the basement. And since the building's been built in the 60s, it's the waterproofing that was used is probably not as good as the waterproofing they use nowadays. And so it needs work to prevent further damage. And we'll go over some of these issues before. And our thought was we could separate the foundation work out ahead of time. So this work needs to be completed before we touch anything in the basement. And so by separating this out as a separate sub-project, we can speed up the construction of the rest of the project and also improve the quality of the space ahead of time. And so we've asked Fendorf and their subcontractors to give us a current price. This is 2001 numbers that you're seeing on the screen. And
Gene, 2021.
21, excuse me. Yeah, thank you. And so they broke it down into 4 areas, areas 1, 2, 2A, and 3. And we'll kind of go over what those areas are in a minute. But basically the education wing is areas 1 and 3. And they came up with a price tag of $128,090. And they also did not include any landscaping or possible repair of the masonry, tuck pointing. So they gave us separate allowance numbers for those. And so our total budget for starting that project today would be $169,000. And we also looked at the main church. So if you look in the fellowship hall, you can see damage on the walls in there also. And so we have similar issues over there. And so areas 2 and 2A came up with a price tag of $89,880 with landscaping allowances of $12,000 and masonry repair of $11,000, or a total budget amount of $113,000. And the reason we broke this out into 2 separate projects is thought that we may only be able to fund a certain portion of this at this time, and that the rest of the project would probably be funded with the main building project. So I think our current thinking is that we do the education wing now this summer, and that the main church building would be done sometime in the future, probably with the rest of the upgrade of the education wing. And this next slide shows kind of a drawing of the basement. And so this shows the areas. So area 1 is the north side of the education wing. Area 3 is the south side of the education wing. And area 2 is the north side of the main church building. 2A is the west side of the church building. Now you'll see that there's a couple areas that are not shown, like the south area of the church building. And it was the contractor's opinion there that there was sufficient grade there, and there shouldn't be any water issues other than we had some window well by the kitchen there that was caving in a little bit due to frost heaving. That would probably have to be repaired. But the west side of the main church building, where the quilter storage is, and that kind of utility room down in the south east corner there, those were pretty dry and pretty good shape. It didn't show any evidence of damage. Same thing with the main entrance that was built in '94. That was pretty dry, and it has its own new drainage system. It was in pretty good shape. The east side of the education wing was pretty much all pavement over here. And that was pretty dry also. We didn't see any damage. So most of the damage we saw were on the north side of the education wing and the south side. And by what I mean by damage, you can go in there and see the peeling of the paint, the rust on the heating units, and just the overall musty smell down there. And so this all needs to be improved. And so what the work would include is removing that existing light well on the north side and regrading this
Just,
area.
you know what, get down on the ground with her and pet her a lot so she settles down.
Sorry, Andrew, if you could mute to that'd be great. Anyway, currently there's a low spot in that area north of the education wing where water collects. And so after a rainy day, you walk out in the grass on that north side and the ground is really spongy. And so we're retaining a lot of water in there, and that water seeps through the walls. So we would be regrading this whole area to get water away from the building. On the south side of the education wing, that grade is fairly flat, and there's a lot of gravel and plantings over there. But we have similar damage there. And so we're going to have to excavate about 6 feet out, 6 to 7 feet out from the building to get the walls bare enough. And what they'll do is they'll do a pressure wash. I'll tell you all the list of things that they're including here. Erosion control, excavation, 1 foot out from the bottom of the footing and approximately 6 feet out from the building. Removal of existing wood timber areaways, which is on that north side. Underpinning of the retaining wall. So there's a retaining wall on the north side here that have a grade change here. And so we'll be underpinning that to keep that from falling in. Backfilling and with free draining sand, plus 6 inches of topsoil. So it'll be ready for planting, but does not include plantings. They include pressure wash cleaning of the existing surfaces and do an inspection of the wall to make sure there's no damage to the masonry. If there is masonry, we'll have to dip into that masonry repair allowance. And they would seal the footer and install a sheet applied membrane for waterproofing. We're also having them include 2 inches of insulation on the exterior so to help improve the thermal performance. Also will be a new 4-inch drain tile with a filter sock and drainage board to help direct the water from the waterproofing to the drain tile, and replace the existing sump pump with a higher capacity pump. Currently, there's a sump pump in the Boy Scout storage room at the end of the basement corridor. I don't know if you can see my arrow or not, but it's down in here. And so we'll put a higher capacity pump there. And it also includes a 10% construction contingency and a 5% management fee for Findorf to manage all these subcontracts. When we go to area 2 and 2A, they install a new drain tile. There currently isn't a drain tile system along this wall. So we put in excavate 6 feet out with erosion control, same issues with the backfill and the pressure washing, the sealing, new insulation board, new drain tile. And we put a new sump in that storage room in the northwest corner. And so there'll be a little work there. And we pipe that water from that area to the main building sewer storm sewer system, which runs to the mechanical room and out to Wakefield Street. And so we'll make sure that all that water gets out of the building. And so we put new drain tile along the west side. And so that's what that work includes. Does anybody have any questions on what the scope of this work is?
Jean, can I just add something before we go into questions? Is that, so we were going through our what we're focusing on is building maintenance is one of them. So we just feel very strongly that this is number one building maintenance issue that needs to be done. And before we start thinking about putting more money into this building, this is a problem that really needs to be addressed. And so this is something that we are kind of peeling away from the master plan and saying, we want to do this now, right? So I just wanted to
Yes.
make that clear why, we were talking about master plan and now we're ending up with foundation drainage. I wanted to kind of connect those dots so everybody
Yeah.
understood.
Jean and Jen, this is Nancy Abraham. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Firstly, thank you all for the work on this. It's really great that this has been going on even through the pandemic. As somebody who's been a member of Midvale, I think since 1958, like this weekend, the problem of the water has been a continuous problem, not since 1958, but maybe since the education wing was built in the mid-60s. So I just can't emphasize and endorse and underscore enough to you and others that this is the single most important thing that we would be doing if we take this on, because biblically, it also tells us that the importance of a strong foundation, and certainly our foundation
Yes.
has been our bugaboo. So
Yeah. Well said.
thank you
Nancy.
so much.
Well
Thank you
said.
so much.
Mhm.
So, Pastor or Jen, you want to talk about the budget and funding sources?
Pastor, do you
Sure.
want to do that?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about this. So we've been working on this with the executive committee of the council and with the building and renewal team. So thinking about how this might go forward is that if we approve this foundation work and waterproofing work, the council would be the first group to have to approve that. And that could perhaps happen at their May or June meeting. And then if we wanted to continue forward with this project, the congregation would have to approve it because it's a significant expense. And so we would have a congregational meeting, a special meeting with just this one topic as the topic. You may remember we did that for the organ renewal project, for example, as well, where anytime we do a special project outside of our budget that is of this scale, we want to make sure the congregation is behind it and supporting it, and that's authorized by a congregational meeting. In general conversation with Findorf, they think that they could get going as early as 2 weeks after the final approval, but it could be longer depending on how their subcontractors get booked out over the next few weeks and months. And that each phase would take 2 to 3 weeks, and they would do one of those areas at a time. So for example, they would probably start with the north side of the education wing as the first area. And once that's complete, then they would move to the next area. And then the source of funding for this is the main open question that the council and you as the congregation will need to help us with. So Jean said that if we focus on especially those two areas around the education wing now, that's about 169, 170,000 range. The endowment committee has approved recommending up to $30,000 from this year's endowment fund towards this project. So that is a great start to the funding. We have around $30,000 to $35,000 currently in our capital improvement fund. That's a fund that we contribute to each month from our regular budget. And so over the last couple of years, that fund has grown to that amount. We diminished that fund almost to zero after we did the window project in the education wing several years ago. And so since that window project has completed, we've built up this amount in the capital improvement fund. But then that still leaves around $100,000 or a little more. So that would have to come from either cash reserves that the church has on hand from taking a loan, or from a fundraising appeal to the congregation that would be done this summer, or a combination of those three options. And so the council will be weighing those choices, and we'd be glad to hear from the congregation as well and as others in terms of what a good funding source or program would be as they work on that. But we do think, because we have the endowment funds and capital improvement funds in hand, and because this is certainly the top priority, and I love the way Nancy reminds us of building a strong foundation. That was beautiful. We'll have to remember that. You know, we want to try and do this now. So this is why we're bringing this forward, and also because we're still in this transition time. The building and the parking lot and other places are not utilized as much as they would normally be. So it's an opportune time to have this disruption. So and then it also gives us a season, at least between now and perhaps when the main remodeling project would take place, to make sure that these waterproofing improvements are doing the job that they need to do before we would put money into the building. So I will pause there and then let time for questions or comments or discussion. I think particularly on the waterproofing foundation work, but you know, on any aspect of the plan too as we go forward. But just know that we'll have lots more time to discuss and refine the rest of the plan before we ever move forward with that part of it.
So I'll stop sharing the slides and we can talk to each other.
Had that one question in the chat about potential mold abatement. Has anyone done a mold assessment on the basement? Because if there's a musty smell, that's not a good sign.
So when we do the remodeling in the basement, they would probably get to that mold issue and put in new finishes.
Because my mother, in her home that was built in the area in the late 50s, had a similar issue with some shifting in the foundation, and then a crack developed so that water was draining down along the wall of the foundation into the basement, and it got worse over time, and she didn't notice it until it got really bad. And in the meantime, mold had accumulated in the walls. And so
Yeah,
it's a big process.
Yeah, that's hopefully what we'll address as we first seal the outside of the building and then clean up the interior. That's exactly the kind of questions that they'll make sure they address. Yeah, that's really important.
That's a you know, that people should not be exposed to mold.
Right.
Health issue.
I do.
Other questions or feedback, Nels?
This is Nels. I do have a question. I love how the main office area has been expanded, because I know just how cramped everyone has been, and you know, the staff needs to be for dealing with the situation as it is, and it's a wonderful problem to have because it means we're a growing church. But there's one office that I didn't quite understand the abbreviation for. It was the collab. Could somebody explain what that means?
It's a
Sure,
collaboration.
that's short. Yeah.
And it's kind of a small group meeting room.
A collaboration room, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if that was going to become like a studio or a computer room, or what was the, you know, what you would take in there. So
yeah, it could be used for lots of different things. It's basically a separate room that you could either meet or have a special project in.
Okay.
Blake, this is Hans. Oh, can you hear me?
Barely, Hans. You're sort of breaking up.
Okay, I just wanted to remind you, idea of doing the waterproofing wants to make sure everything is done and working before the remodel occurs.
Yep. Yeah, this gives us the chance to make sure the waterproofing works before we do the remodel. Thanks, Hans. Yep.
Hey, Jen and team, this is Emily. When we were imagining this project a long time ago, we considered, would we flip the first and second floor of the E-wing and put the Sunday school on the main floor? excuse me, and the offices up high. And I just wondered if you guys thought about that, if it just didn't make sense. I was just curious how the thinking on that piece went.
We did talk about that. I mean, it was one of those things that when we started, we didn't really have any preconceived ideas. It was really just, it was out there. To answer your question, I don't remember if it was the cost. Pastor Jean or anybody else on the committee, do you guys remember the thought process behind that?
I think they would like to retain the existing bathrooms on first floor. And it made sense to keep the library and nursery in the same place. And so I think those.
Yeah, and there was also a sense of security and reception and hospitality to have the office and that new reception desk in the main floor for weekdays as well as for the weekends to make sure there's ability to sort of monitor who's coming in and out and welcoming people and that kind of thing.
That all makes sense. Thanks. It's helpful.
Brenda answered it in the chat too, but this is Stephanie. But when we were talking about the flipping, if we keep it upstairs, we get to expand that welcoming area, which I know I haven't been at the church as long as everybody else, but in our talks since, I guess, about 10 years now, it's always been trying to make it more welcome, more open, making that flow better. And kind of by keeping it in that same space, we could expand that space.
$11:30.
So any more questions, especially about the waterproofing? Are we feeling confident that we should go ahead and undertake this project and secure the financing either through loan or fundraising or other ways and then we would have a chance to refinance or redo that once we did the main project. But it seems like I'm hoping the quiet, contented faces mean there's a good support for that. But if you have ideas or thoughts now or later, feel free to please reach out to the pastors or the committee or the council about any of those ideas.
This is Carolyn. I would just say that it was one of the problems that we talked about 10 years ago and didn't feel it was serious enough for what we were doing. But I would certainly be on board to do it, the waterproofing, et cetera, first and make sure before we do anything else. I think that's a good plan and well needed.
Well, that's great. Jen, you want to wrap this up? I think we're getting near 11:30 here.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. I know the group that's been working on this, we have a lot of fun. It's a great team working with Paul and Findorf and the pastors. It's very exciting. And thank you for joining us. And I'd also like to say, if tonight or this week you have something, a thought that comes into mind or a question, please reach out to us. You can call or email myself or Jean, anybody on the committee, the pastors. We really want to hear from anybody, big or small question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, there is not an adult forum next week. Please keep in mind or be on the lookout for the next one. I believe it's May 23rd because we'll be in the service on May 16th and some other things that Pastor Blake will be more than happy to talk about, changes and those kinds of things, which he already has. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Pastor Blake. Thank you all and have a great week. When I close out, I'll close it out for everyone, but I'll give about 30 seconds if anybody chooses to say anything else.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for being here.
I just want to say thank you to the committee. You've done an excellent and very thorough job.
Take care.